everybody, and welcome to the Commander Pod, your Magic the Gathering podcast for all things Commander. My name is Kelton Howell.
And I'm Spencer Simpson. As always, thank you so much for listening, and please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on our weekly content. This week, we will be talking about cards that make us smile when we play them. So, let's get into it. What does that mean? What are we talking about here, Kelton?
Yeah, I think my biggest question when we started with this topic is, okay, so good cards? Because good cards are generally fun to play, and we like playing good cards. So what is the difference between a card that's fun to play and just a good card?
Yeah, so I had the same thought. I was like, cool, Rhystic Study. I think I'm always happy. Like, I'm happy with how a game goes after I play Rhystic Study, right?
Yeah.
But I think what we're thinking about more here is cards that we just find a lot of joy in playing, whether or not it, like, leads to us winning a game. Although some of these I think can and are quite good as well. We both tend to love value, where we play, generally decent Magic and like to generate value. But some of these will be just more of the fun stuff that we like playing.
Yeah, it's the kind of card that when you draw it, you think, awesome, this is one of my favorite cards in the deck, and I'm so excited to play this card. And when you actually play the card, you're a little bit giddy. I have that feeling with several cards, and they made it onto the list.
Yeah, I mean, so what we did is we ended up looking through each of our commander decks, and this was actually surprisingly easy. We looked through each of our commander decks and found kind of like our favorite card in each of those decks, and then whittled it down to 5. And for me, looking through some of my decks, it was both enlightening and also somewhat depressing, because I looked through and I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I like playing these decks. They're good decks, but I don't really find joy in playing any of these cards. And typically it was maybe a card from each deck that I was like, this card is sick,
I'm so glad you said that. We didn't talk about that before, but I had a very similar experience where I have quite a few commander decks. So the way I did it was I track all of my decks in Moxfield, so it shows up in my collection. My collection is just all of the cards in all of my commander decks. So I was able to scroll through my collection, and it really came out to the ones that I put on the list were like 10 to 12 probably cards that like made the list, and then I whittled it down to 5. But that's not that many. I should have more cards that I play just because they bring me joy, and I think they're really fun.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, especially if you're playing higher power decks, even like mid to high power decks, your slots for cards that are just fun
is really narrow.
It's pretty narrow. It's pretty limited. Yeah. So even better if you can fit it into a strategy. And we'll talk about these cards and how they fit into the strategies of our decks as well.
Yeah.
But I think I need to be better at playing cards that I'm excited about. But that being said, I think there are also maybe few cards in Magic that I get like really excited about that I think walk a good line between value and cool, if that makes sense.
I would agree with that. I do think that is part of the allure for me of playing more casual games, lower power games, because there's more room for cards like that. A lot of the cards that were on my list are cards that sit in my lower power decks, because those decks can get away with playing these less powerful cards that are just fun for me to play.
Yeah, for sure. I think some of mine, most of my decks that I'm pulling these from are like mid power decks. And a fair amount of them contribute to the strategy, but I did notice that they all did cross a line between strategy and just cool, and like they in the Venn diagram of cool, strategic, and value, they kind of hit the very middle of most of them, and kind of have to if you want to put them in a deck that is like mid to high power, right? And have it stick around there.
I did find with some of mine though that the cards that I think are really cool to play are ones that fit into a very narrow strategy and really only work in a very specific type of deck. Otherwise, they're unplayable. But the fact that they do work in that very narrow, specific type of deck is what makes it really fun and interesting to play, because it doesn't have a place anywhere else.
Yeah, for sure. But I do feel like that narrowness like varies. I'll say the same about mine is they perform exceptionally well in a very narrow strategy.
Sure.
But some of them are more narrow than others, right?
Yeah.
So should we just get
Let's
into
do it. That's a lot of qualifier that we've
Yep.
attached to this conversation, and we should just jump in and see where the conversation takes us. Do you want to give us your first one, Spencer?
Yeah, can I? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell you the deck that it's in, and then I'm going to tell you the card that it is. And not all of these decks are listed on Moxfield yet. We're working on that. We're getting to the place that we feel confident about them before Like in my next Mox Field. Which
some of my decks have been built a long time ago and have not been updated in a very long time, and some of them are not eating their vegetables. And
we've been working through them since we've done our deck building tips
series.
The Power Level series. So this one is from my Sidisi and Umori partner deck, and maybe I should read them really quick, huh?
Sure, the commander.
Yeah. So Sidisi Brood Tyrant is 1 and Sultai mana, so black, green, blue, for a legendary creature 3/3 Naga Shaman. And whenever Sidisi Brood Tyrant enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards. And then whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token.
Yep.
Quick aside, did you notice that from the Duskmourn spoilers that they're not saying enters the battlefield anymore, they're just saying enters?
Yeah, they said they were going to change that a little while ago, and I don't know that I noticed it on cards until now. But now they just say enters.
I mean, it's a good shortcut for it, but it'll be weird because
I actually think it's weird. I think it's weird for new players, but for established players, we're like, oh, of course.
It's like a mental shortcut because we use ETB anyways for the most part.
I actually thought about this the other day when I was explaining Magic to a newer player. Battlefield is weird. Like, that's the name for putting a card into play.
Yeah.
And I can't think of another game that's analogous with.
I guess old Magic would say,
the play area.
Yeah.
The old Magic would say comes into play, right?
Yeah, right.
I wonder when they switched from comes into play to enters the battlefield. Like, when did it get renamed to the battlefield?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Anyways.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can't decide which one's better because now enters the battlefield is like synonymous with that anyways.
Yeah.
Anyway, quick aside, that's Sidisi. Umori is the companion of the deck. You want to read Umori really quick and then we'll get the card?
Yeah, absolutely.
Umori the Collector.
Umori the Collector is 2 and then 2 hybrid Golgari mana for a 4/5 legendary creature ooze. It has Companion. So Companion is, if the card is your chosen companion, you can cast it once from outside of the game.
Which is in different...
Which is not true anymore.
Yeah, right.
The new text on that, they update it with the Multiversal Legends, is if it's your chosen companion, you may put it into your hand from outside of the game for 3 mana as a sorcery, because it was way too busted.
Yeah, that's so much worse.
The previous iteration. Yeah, so... the stipulation for being the companion to your deck is that each non-land card in your starting deck shares a creature type.
A
card type,
yeah.
Which is has to be creature and commander.
Is creatures, yep.
I guess if you played something like Cody, you could choose like artifact or something like that.
Yeah. Any commander that's an artifact creature,
or an enchantment, or planeswalker. Wow,
yeah,
planeswalker would be probably impossible. I don't know that there are enough playable planeswalkers.
Well, yeah, because
there are planeswalker commanders.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, because Umori is technically not in the deck, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you could with Umori. I was thinking like Breya is an artifact, but she doesn't have the right colors. You don't have anything that also has green. Yeah, and black. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anyways, as Umori the Collector enters the battlefield, you choose a card type, and then spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. So it's a discount on all.
Is a way to have a creature discount in the command zone, and also to impose a deck building restriction. So this deck runs 37 lands and 63 creatures, 64 technically including Umori. And we should probably show Sidisi again at some point because it's the main portion of the deck is milling cards and creating zombie tokens, and then trying to reanimate the cards that I've milled. And this card that I'm including that makes me smile every time I play it is a relatively new card that I've not been able to play very much, but have been really excited to play every time I draw it, and it's Izoni, Center of the Web. Izoni, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Izoni, Center of the Web is 4 green black for a legendary creature, Elf Detective at 5/4. It has Menace, and whenever Izoni, Center of the Web enters the battlefield or attacks, you may collect evidence 4. Now, collecting evidence is you can exile cards with total mana value 4 or greater from your graveyard. And if you do, create 2 2/1 black and green spider creature tokens with Menace and Reach. And then you can and then a different line of text, not part of the entering or attacking. This is an entirely new ability. Sacrifice 4 tokens, surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. You gain 2 life. So we're creating zombie tokens, and Izoni creates spider tokens. And so
you have tokens to sacrifice.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool.
And we're filling our graveyard anyways with Sidisi. So we're getting more stuff in our graveyard to be able to fuel the collecting evidence. She has Menace, so she's hard to block. And then we're trying to sacrifice our tokens to Surveil, which can put more cards on our graveyard. And then we can get some card draw. And then Incidental Life Gain, which we're not as, interested in, but happy for.
So what I think is cool about this deck that you've built is that it only runs creatures. And so you have to find the effects that you would need for your deck to run on creature cards, stapled onto creature cards that you wouldn't normally. So one of my questions that I have about this card specific is this one of the card advantage pieces that counts towards, your card, the massive card advantage that you need for your deck?
Oh, man, I think so.
Is that one of the reasons you put it in the deck?
It is, yeah. It seemed like a pretty decent card advantage engine. I mean, 2 cards a turn is really good. Now, it's not always going to be that. Yeah. But it can be more than that, though, if I'm creating enough tokens.
I remember the first time you played this card in your Sidisi deck after you had just added it. It came out on the battlefield, and I was like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. You drew so many cards off of this. I was so surprised.
It's pretty crazy. Well, because typically, if you're surveilling 2, you're going to hit a creature card. And so what I can do is I can put just one or both of those cards into the graveyard as part of the surveil, which I typically want to do. And that will net me a zombie. And so if I do that on my turn and then attack with her and collect enough evidence, then that's 3 tokens already.
And you usually already have tokens built up from the deck anyways and from Sidisi.
Right, exactly. So you can quickly regenerate the tokens, and so they're just it does generate a lot of value pretty quickly. I'm going to see if I have it listed here as card advantage. I think I should. I do. It's one of my card advantage pieces.
Cool.
It's not even one of my strongest ones because it's got this deck, because it only plays creatures, plays some pretty beefy creatures that do a lot of work. But this is my favorite one. It's like I'd rather draw this than like my Consecrated Sphinx often.
That's cool. That's really cool. And it's just what is it about it that makes you smile? Just it has a lot of flavor. It does a lot of things. It provides a lot of value.
Yeah, I think all of those things. Like it creates tokens. It kind of just fits everything in the deck, and it's not just like a general value piece, right? Like my deck plays, like I said, Consecrated Sphinx or like Nezahal Primal Tide, and those are like really good draw effects, but they don't have anything to do with the deck outside of them being creatures. And I think this is fun that it's like a big beater, can put cards in my graveyard, can get value out of the cards in my graveyard if I can't reanimate them, which I often can't because we don't play any instants and sorceries, which are some of the better reanimation effects, right?
Sure, you have some reanimation effects on creatures, but there's just not that many.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not that many that are worth playing, at least. And so, and then it can also draw you cards and surveil. So it ticks a lot of boxes. And it's kind of a new card that I was excited to play, and so maybe I'll get sick of it one day. But for now, I'm really stoked on this one.
Yeah, that's cool. I love it. Thank you for sharing that card.
Yeah, can we move on to yours? This is one when we were looking through these. This is one that you said was in one of your decks. You told me what deck it was, and I guessed which card it was.
Yeah, and it's totally cheating because it's technically 2 cards, and that's because it's Pure Imaginative Rascal and Toothy Imaginary Friend. So Pure Imaginative Rascal is 2 and a green for a 1/1 legendary creature, human, and it has partner with Toothy Imaginary Friend. So if you've never played partner with before, when one of the creatures enters the battlefield, target player may put the other card into their hand from their library and then shuffle their library.
So you could target me and I could get my Toothy.
I could. If you had Toothy, I definitely could. And that's because this came from the Battle Bond set where you were actually playing as a team with a partner. And so this mechanic was really cool because you could play one of the partners and then target your partner to search their library for the other partner if you weren't playing that color.
Talk about an underrated set, by the way. Everyone thought that was going to be such a dud, and then
I really liked it. And that's actually one of the reasons is because I actually opened these cards in a booster pack playing Battle Bond. And
sick. Right, because when you opened them in a pack, they were both in the pack.
And you take 2.
Oh, cool.
From the pack, if I remember correctly. And so, anyways, the rest of the effect on the card is if one or more counters would be put on a permanent your team controls, that many plus 1 of each of those kinds of counters are put onto that permanent instead. So it's kind of like a hardened scales effect.
Nice. But any kind of counter, that's kind of sick.
Any kind of counter, yeah. And then Toothy Imaginary Friend is 3 and a blue for a 1/1. Legendary creature Illusion. Partner with Pure Imaginative Rascal. And whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on Toothy Imaginary Friend. And then when Toothy leaves the battlefield, you draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it.
Nice.
So if you're able to have both Toothy and Pure out and draw a card, you get to put 2 1/1 counters on Toothy. It's attacking as a 3/3, and if someone removes it, you get 2 cards back. Which is
and
pretty
removes
good.
it with anything. I think the scariest part about playing against Toothy is that it leaves the battlefield, not dies. And so if you bounce it, if you exile you're drawing those cards no matter what. Toothy gets out of control.
It's awesome. So there's a lot of reasons I like these cards. Like I said, I just really liked Battle Bond as a set. I thought it was very fun. I also really like the partner with mechanic because you can only play those 2 cards together. I know that partner, just the generic partner in Commander, has been problematic because it's led to some very powerful decks and powerful pairings of Commander. And that's a large part of the CEDH meta, right? Is just partner commanders. And what I like about partner with is, number one, it limits what you can do with it. You can only play these 2 together. But it's also card advantage because if I play one of them, I get to go search my deck for the other one and put it right into my hand. And now I've got 2 good cards. And I think that's really fun. So I really love the partner with mechanic. I think it's really fun. These cards are easy for me to love because I really love Simic. And I really love +1/+1 counter decks. That's a weak spot. I have so many of them. I buy almost every one of the +1/+1 counter Simic precons that they make, which is a lot of them, it feels like. And then this is also really flavorful. I love that it's this young kid who has this giant imaginary friend that battles with him. And it's really fun. So I think it's got a lot of good flavor to the card. And it's good enough to play. A lot of the partner with commanders are not good enough to play always.
Yeah. They're like medium. A lot of them are pretty medium.
A lot of them are medium. Yeah, but
I do
you want to be playing both, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to always fit both into your deck.
Yeah, I found that I played some partner with cards and I ended up taking them out. And actually I ended up putting it back in, though, because of it being card advantage, like you said. Like they basically cantrip, right?
Yeah.
And they're honestly like decent cards for the most part. I do think they perform better in the 99 though than as commanders typically. The partner
I agree.
with.
Well, you lose the card advantage if you're
Right.
not running it in the 99.
Because you can't put
Which
them in
is
your
a
hand
big
from the
part of the
command
value.
zone, right?
I don't think so because I think it says
From their library.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not that not that matters. You still have to cast it anyways from the command zone, but
Totally. And I did misspeak. Like I said, partner with commanders. There were non-legendary creature partners in Battle Bond, which I also think were very good. And I actually do play some of them because I think they're cool.
wait, there were non-legendary partner with. That's right.
Yeah, so one of the ones that I play in my AC deck are Lore Weaver and Ley Weaver, which
Right.
it's cool because with Ley Weaver, you can generate infinite mana, which when you play Ley Weaver, then you get to go search up Lore Weaver, and Lore Weaver is an infinite mana sink to draw cards, and so you can draw your whole deck.
Cool.
So I actually really like how those two work together. I think it's really fun.
That's really cool. Yeah, partner with is cool. These are
awesome.
sweet cards. These are really cool. And like I said, Toothy's actually like really tough to deal with. Pure is just a good. These are like really good too.
Yeah,
so they kind of
these
fit
are
that
good
crossroads,
Simic
right?
effects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't think of a Simic deck that doesn't do fine with these, but I play so many +1/+1 counter decks, and these are very good.
Yeah, is there a world where you have a Simic deck that like doesn't necessarily care about +1/+1 counters, but you still put Toothy in because you're like trying to get card draw?
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah, I think Toothy can go in card draw decks. I was trying to think of a similar card to Toothy because I think there is one out there that draws you cards, but the one that I kept thinking of was Chasm Skulker, which whenever you draw a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then when it dies, you create X 1/1 blue squid creature tokens with Island Walk, where X is the number of 1/1 counters. So instead of getting cards, you're getting 1/1s with Island Walk, which
if you're already drawing
is a great card and
cards,
gets played in a lot of +1/+1 counter, and I think draw decks. I mean, it's just a pretty good payoff.
Yeah, it's pretty solid, and the horror commander too.
And it's a horror. It's a very relevant type.
Cool. This is
cool.
awesome. That's a good one.
Okay, tell me about your next one.
Okay, this one is a pretty specific one as well. This is from my Tana and Tevish partner deck. We'll just read Tana because it's more relevant for Tana the Bloodsower, and we did a deck tech on her recently. Tana the Bloodsower is 2 red-green for a legendary creature, Elf Druid. It's a 2/2 with Trample. And it says, whenever Tana the Bloodsower deals combat damage to a player, create that many 1/1 green Saproling creature tokens. So the point of this deck basically is it's kind of pseudo Voltron, where I'm trying to get Tana big to be able to deal combat damage and create Saprolings, and then I can go wide and generate value from the Saprolings. I'm not necessarily trying to machine gun anyone to death with commander damage or anything, but just get general value from it. And this is one of my favorite includes in the deck. I was so excited when I found this. I poured through all of the potential Jund cards that could add +1/+1 counters that would do that would also have like some sort of other effect. And this one is Deathgreeter's Champion. So Deathgreeter's Champion is 2 and a red for a 2/1 human warrior. It has dash for 3 and a red, and dash is you can cast it for its dash cost, and if you do, it gains haste. But then it's returned from the battlefield to your hand at the beginning of the next end step, which is great because it has backup 1. These are a lot of things I have to explain. Backup 1, which is when this creature enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, either itself or another creature, but hopefully another creature typically. Yep. And then if it's another creature, it gains the following ability until end of turn, and the last line of it says Double Strike. Which is so sick because it can make Tana permanently bigger and give Tana Double Strike, and if I dash it, it can do that repeatedly. So
yeah, that was my first question reading this card: is how often do you want to dash it versus just cast it for 3 mana? Because the normal cost is cheaper.
Yeah, I mean it's 1 mana cheaper. I think I almost always want to dash this in. I think there's maybe a situation where I like need a blocker or something and I leave it out. But even if I do need a blocker and I dash it in, then Tana gets bigger, gains Double Strike. I create a bunch of Saprolings, right? Twice as many Saprolings, hopefully. And Tana has Trample, notably. So,
and then you can do it again next turn.
Yeah, so exactly.
This is something you're fine paying 4 mana to do multiple turns in a row.
Yeah. So Tana's a 2/2, and even when Tana is a 2/2, this represents 6 total damage and 6 potential Saprolings from my hand. And then it just continues to get bigger, which I think
that's really good. If you can actually land it for all 6, then it's a total blowout.
Yeah, but even if you land it for 3, like
good.
Part of what I like about First Strike is that protects Tana from like a 3/3, right, or something with just anything with 3 toughness trying to block it, because it can hit the First Strike damage and then trample through the rest of it.
That's cool.
Just a really cool card. Again, not one that I play in every deck, but when I do play it in Tana, it really makes me happy because it, does really well. It won me a game the other day when we were playing together. It was awesome.
It did. It's a really good card. I also think backup is a really cool mechanic.
Backup's a sweet
coming
mechanic.
from the person who likes 1/1 counters.
Yeah, I mean backup's awesome. And if you're playing in a deck that wants +1/+1 counters, that has red, and you can give a big beater Double Strike, awesome. Yep. I think it's just a really good card. I think it's probably underplayed, to be honest. I want to see what it looks like on EDH Rec. It's in 0% of decks that can play it. So play
I
Death
think it's really
good
at low and mid powers for sure.
Yeah. It depends on the deck and the strategy, and it's not. It doesn't go in every deck.
But it's good.
But it's sweet.
It's really good.
It's also relatively new, I guess. It's from March of the Machine Commander, which is actually not very new. That's like a year ago now.
Is it? Oh, man, that makes me feel bad.
Isn't that crazy?
You hear me say this about a lot of good cards, is that this is also played in Vintage Cube. And I realize that 1v1 is very different than Commander, but I do think it signifies that it's a decently powerful card.
Yeah, I didn't realize that it's played in Vintage Cube. That's awesome. That always makes me actually feel kind of good about having found it, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, sweet. People, like, this is obviously good. People want to be playing it. That's cool.
Yeah. That's a cool card. I love that one.
Thank you. On to this card, which I really think is cool and also annoying.
This is a card that brings me joy when I play it and brings Spencer grief. He does not like this card.
Irks me to no end.
This card is Exchange of Words. 1 blue for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you choose 2 target creatures. For as long as Exchange of Words remains on the battlefield, exchange the text boxes of those creatures.
Dumb. Just
if
kidding.
You're
It's
thinking
cool.
to yourself, what the heck is this card? It's because it's from Unfinity, but it's one of the playable Commander legal cards from Unfinity, and it's weird, and
It's
I like
weird.
that. It's
It's
really
cool.
funny, and the art is really funny. It's two mascots arguing with each other, but they have their heads swapped, and I'm pretty sure it's a Johnny and the Minotaur Planeswalker. Crap. What's his name? It starts with a Angrath. I wanted to say Anzrag, but that's the mole.
No, that's
It's
the mole.
Angrath.
Yep.
And I also think the art goes along really well with the flavor text, which is before criticizing, walk a mile about 1.6 kilometers in their head. That way, when you do, you're a mile away and you have their head.
That's funny.
So, anyways, it's a fun card. I also think it's a sneaky good effect. I think this is like actually a playable effect in Commander.
I mean, it's good. To be fair, I shouldn't dislike this as much as I do. I think you've only played it one time with
Against
me.
you?
Against
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And you had a 1/1 token that did nothing. Maybe
it
it had
no
flying
text
or
box.
something.
It had an
Yeah.
empty text box. Yep.
And I had out Toxrill the Corrosive. And so on your turn, maybe it wasn't a 1/1 because it would have died, but it was small. It was a small do nothing. You know what it was? It was a Swansong bird.
Oh, there you go. Sweet.
It was a Swansong bird, and you switched them. So all of a sudden I had a 7/7 flyer, and you had a 2/2 with all of Toxrill's text. It
Sweet.
was crazy. And the craziest thing about that too with Toxrill, just as an aside, is that I start getting I think Toxrill puts them on only opponent's creatures. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But everyone else's slime counters
Still stay.
Creatures already had slime counters.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So all it does is make things worse, makes things better for you and worse for me, but stays the same for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think this card is good. This is a I'm gonna say inaccurate analysis of the card.
Uh-huh.
But how would you feel if I compared this to Gilded Drake?
Honestly, that's pretty close to Gilded Drake, actually. You do have to accept. Okay,
You have to control another creature.
You have to control another creature.
A bad creature.
Yes, and you have to. And
The power and toughness don't change.
And the power and toughness don't change, and the creature has to live. Like you can't, because it's targeting them. If someone removes your creature in response, Gilded Drake will enter, and its effect will immediately happen.
Yep.
Or its effect will go on the stack, and if they kill Gilded Drake, it doesn't matter. I don't think.
And this one has targets.
Yep.
Yep. It is significantly worse than Gilded Drake.
But
It does a similar thing sometimes.
wait, does Gilded Drake happen if it gets removed? I think it does.
What do you mean?
Like, does Gilded Drake still switch if Gilded Drake gets removed? I think it does.
I don't remember. It has a lot of weird interactions, I remember, because I was playing it the other day in Cube, and I had a rules question that I couldn't figure out how to actually respond. I had to ask a very knowledgeable player how that actually works.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, we don't play Gilded Drake enough, but I don't think it's quite Gilded Drake or Time Walk.
No.
Shout out, play to win, but it's pretty good.
But it's pretty good. I do think
Yeah.
it's really, and I think it's fun. I think it's really fun to play. It's also kind of pseudo theft, which is an archetype that I really enjoy in Commander.
Mm-hmm.
And so this card is just a joy for me to play every time. And I always get a good eye roll out of it when I play it, usually from the player that I'm switching something with. But it's really good to just steal a really good effect. It also kind of blanks someone's commander, so it can be a little bit mean because you can just take the text box from a commander, which is generally the most important part of a commander, and just give it a much worse effect.
Yeah, the thing that's crazy is that it stays around, not until either of the creatures leave, but until the enchantment leaves.
Yeah. So if you had a commander and I stole the text box from your commander, and then your commander died and came back, we would each be getting the effect. My creature would still have
Yes.
the commander's effect, and your new instance of the commander would have that effect.
Yep, it's
It is
unless
interesting how it
exchange of
works.
words was removed.
Unless
then-
exchange of words is removed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's
so
cool.
I think this is a fun card.
Very sweet.
As
I like
as
that one a
much as
lot.
you hate it and lost to it that one time.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I'm still on the fence about uncards in Commander, but I think this one is one of the more tame ones. It doesn't talk about stickers or attractions or anything like that. So.
Do you not play Name Sticker Goblin?
No.
Will you never play Name Sticker Goblin? Because it's actually a ritual.
It's good, yeah. Like in CDH, I probably would, but I wouldn't put it in any of my casual decks.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm putting on the spot here.
Exists.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's also
Dockside Extortionist. There's a lot of good. Good rituals out there. I don't need to.
You don't need to sully yourself with Name Sticker Goblin.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Did you see? Okay, I think we've talked about this before. Of them playing on Tolarian Community College Commander. It was a couple old pros playing.
Yes.
Might be current pros. I don't follow the pro scene very much. And someone played Name Sticker Goblin, and one of them was like, "If you have a counterspell and you don't counter this, I will never forgive you. What is this garbage being played right now?" And that's a little bit how I feel about it, even though I'm not like a Magic old head necessarily. Yeah. So anyway, can we talk about my card?
Let's
so excited
talk
for this one. We're gonna take me out of the hot seat and put me into the fun seat, and we're gonna talk about this card. It's it's in my Wilhelt the Rot Cleaver deck. I'll read Wilhelt really quick. He is a 2/blue/black for a 3/3 legendary creature zombie warrior. And whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have Decayed, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. And then at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a zombie if you do draw a card. So just a zombie type deck.
The best zombie type.
Yeah, objectively probably the best zombie commander that exists these days. And the card that I want to talk about is Invasion of Amonkhet. This card I think is so sick. So Invasion of Amonkhet is 1/blue/black for a 4 defense point battle. We talked about this before. It's defense.
Yeah, counter. What was it? What did we decide it was?
It's a battle that enters with 4 defense
counters. Defense counters.
Yeah, 4 defense counters.
Yeah.
It is a battle siege, as that is the only type of battle that exists so far.
We'll get more, I'm sure. I think Wizards has said that we're going to get more.
Well, I mean, they were fun. I think battles are fun.
Yeah. I would like to see more of them.
So, Invasion of Amonkhet, again, 1/blue/black for a battle siege that enters with 4 defense counters. And it says when Invasion of... Okay, I'll read it, but I have a question.
We're never going to let you get through this card.
Okay, time out. Okay, well then I'm going to start over, but I have a question.
Okay.
What's his face? Vorinclex. Does it enter with 2 defense counters on it? If an opponent has a Vorinclex, would this enter with 2 defense counters on it? Because Vorinclex makes opposing planeswalkers enter with half of their +1/+1 counters rounded, or half of their loyalty counters rounded down. These are defense counters.
Yeah, well, because the way Planeswalkers work, if you have doubling season and you play Planeswalker, it comes in with twice as many loyalty counters.
Right, but I'm wondering if Vorinclex... I'm looking it up now.
Here's to further mix up that problem, though. You choose an opponent as it enters. So does it enter... No, it enters under your control. Does it enter under your control?
Well,
or your
it's always under
control?
your control, I think. But an opponent defends it.
Defends it. Yeah, okay. So if it enters and you have the Vorinclex, does it get 8? Does it
that's
come
what
8?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Oh man. Okay. Well. Okay. This is gonna take too long. We'll post the answer in the comments or something. In any case. Pardon me. In any case, Invasion of Amonkhet, I'm not being interrupted this time by myself, is 1/blue/black for a battle siege that enters with 4 defense counters on it. When Invasion of Amonkhet enters the battlefield, each player mills 3 cards, then each opponent discards a card, and you draw a card.
Okay, so for 3 mana, you are milling, drawing, and causing someone to discard a card.
Everyone to discard. Each opponent.
Everyone. That's pretty good.
It's... Okay, and then we're going to read the backside, and then we're going to talk about how dope this card is and why everyone should be playing it in their Dimir decks that care about graveyards in any way.
Nice.
The backside is Lazotep Convert. So for those who don't know, the way a battle works is if you remove all of the defense counters, so when it enters, you choose an opponent to defend it. Yep. And in Commander, you have a litany of options, right? 3 people, that's a lot of people you can choose from. Choose someone that doesn't have people to block it. and that block your creatures, and then you can attack it with your creatures. You can deal damage to it with spells that deal damage to any target or that specify battles. And when you remove all the defense counters from it, you remove 1 counter per damage dealt, just like a Planeswalker. You exile it, and then you can cast the backside for free. So in the instance of Invasion of Amonkhet, has 4 defense counters, and the backside is Lazotep Convert. Lazotep Convert is a creature zombie. It has 4 power and 4 toughness. And you may have Lazotep Convert enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard, except it's a 4/4 black zombie in addition to its other types.
So this is the Scarab God thing.
So this is the Scarab God thing, except it does not exile the creature. The creature stays in the graveyard.
Nice.
And when you play the front side of Invasion of Amonkhet, you are getting 15 targets, potential targets for creatures. Because everyone mills, everyone mills 3, so that's 12. You draw a card, and then each opponent discards a card, so that's another 3.
Nice.
And likely they're not going to discard a creature, so maybe 12, but 15 potential targets for
and whatever was in their graveyard before.
And whatever was already in their graveyard.
So Breach the Multiverse, which is a big spell, 7 mana, gets you 40 potential targets.
That's a lot.
That's 7. That's more than twice as much.
Yeah.
But it also costs more than twice as much in terms of mana.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. Yeah. Anyways,
that's sweet. Multiverse, very good. This is super castable and incredibly flippable because it only has 4 defense counters.
Yeah.
I think it's such a good card, and I think so many decks should be playing this. My deck probably is not even the ideal deck for this, except that Lazotep Convert is a zombie. And Invasion of Amonkhet is incredibly flavorful for a zombie deck because Amonkhet was very zombie heavy, zombie-centric.
Cool. Also, the art, Lazotep Convert, the art is sweet. And people probably don't see the art very often because you just look at the front side.
Yeah, it's sick. He's so really cool. Sick.
That's awesome.
It's a sweet card.
Is it copying a creature? Is that like a different creature in the art because it's entering as a copy?
Oh, I guess. I didn't think about that.
I don't know.
The flavor text is as the Lazotep cover. The Lazotep is what is the Lazotep? I don't understand the lore enough. Covered his body, he heard Norn's voice fade from a deafening clarion to a distant whisper. So sick.
That's cool.
So this is an instant of invasion where it's like, I guess each instance of invasion are the people resisting on that plane, right?
Yeah, the plane fighting back against the Phyrexians.
So cool.
As a quick note, quick Google search says that if you do have doubling season, you play a battle, it does enter with twice as many counters.
Wow, that's so bad.
Poorly. Yeah.
That's such a bad anti-synergy. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, don't play battles if you're playing counter doubling effects.
Season? Yeah.
If you're playing Peer, don't play battles.
Oh, yeah. Well, because they'd enter with 1 additional one.
Yeah. I mean, play battles if you want. The front sides are really good.
They're sweet.
This one's sick. I will say, I think the ideal deck for this, and we're looking at you, our friend that plays this deck, is the Scarab God. Put this in the Scarab God. It is so incredible in the Scarab God.
It's giving you 15 potential targets.
15 potential targets, and it cantrips, you guys.
And it's cantrips.
So good and underrated. And it is in currently 2% of decks that can play it. That's actually like a pretty decent amount, considering it's not like a staple.
Quite a bit higher than Deathgird Champion.
Yep, but it's really good.
Yeah. Very cool. Love this card.
Me too. I also love it.
Okay.
But you also love this card.
I do, and this is a Phyrexian card, very similar to the invasion that you just shared. So this is Synthesis Pod, 3 and a Phyrexian blue mana for an artifact. It has the activated ability 1 and a Phyrexian blue mana. Tap, exile a spell you control. That's the cost. The effect is target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a card with mana value equal to 1 plus the exiled spell's mana value. You exile that card, then that player shuffles, and you may cast the exiled card without paying its mana cost. So I think the obvious, play on an existing card here is Birthing Pod. Right? So Birthing Pod is 3 and a green Phyrexian mana and has 1 and a green Phyrexian mana tap, sacrifice a creature as the cost, and then you search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost put onto the battlefield.
Yep.
So this does the same thing, but with spells. And then
Yeah,
you get any
deals with the stack
spell.
rather than the battlefield.
Yes. This card is weird.
Yeah.
And
it's cool, though.
I think it's really cool. I do love spinning the wheel and seeing what I get, which is funny because I hate Chaos Warp. But I do like spinning the wheel and just seeing what happens with an effect. I think that's kind of fun.
Sure.
I will say another reason I like this card is because objectively Phyrexian mana is very cool.
Yeah.
And it's fun
Phyrexian
to
mana's
play this card.
Sick.
I will always pay the 2 life, and
Yeah.
I have died many a times in a commander game by just paying too much Phyrexian mana. And this card just always gets a really great reaction. Nobody knows what this card is. When you play this card, people are like, I have never heard of this card, let alone seen this card. And it's because it was from All Will Be One Commander.
Yeah,
So
lots of
it's,
hands
very
politely
narrow.
reaching to see what this card does.
Yes, everybody has to read this card. It is in 0% of decks on EDHREC, of eligible decks. And I think that is because it's very narrow.
It is.
I play this in a Spell Slinger deck. And it's especially good in commanders where a commander gets to cast a card for free.
Yeah.
Because if you don't like the card that you're casting for free, you get to spin the wheel for a different card and hope it's an upgrade. It will at least be an upgrade mana-wise.
Yeah, I mean, a notable difference between this and Birthing Pod is that Birthing Pod, you get to, I mean, you still have to spend the mana on the creature, typically, like you can reanimate it or whatever, but you get to go search your library for the other creature, so you get to go look for a specific combo, where this is you're just spinning it off the top, trying to see what you get.
This one's random.
Yeah, and you may not...
It's from an opponent's deck. You don't get to do your own deck.
I didn't see. I forgot that part.
I know. It's because it's not a very good card, but it is one of the most fun cards I've ever played. When I draw this card, I always cast it.
You
and
just
I
slam
always
it?
have
You
yes,
slam
because it's
Synthesis
so
Pod?
fun. And I have not done this yet because the commander that I played in, which is Grima, casts spells for free, and so I always have something to use it on.
Yeah.
But you can also just, if you have a dead spell in your hand, you can use that spell.
And then just go see if you get something better.
And then just get something else.
Yeah, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, and it hits. It doesn't even have to be like a spell where the type matches the spell that you're exiling.
Oh, that's
like
so
it's
interesting
just
because
like any card.
Yeah, I guess I was reading it with like instant and sorcery, but it's any type, any non-land thing.
It can convert a Path to Exile into an Ornithopter of Paradise. Like that would be a bad trade. I don't know that you would ever like get rid of your Path to Exile, but
how crazy would this be if you could hit opponent spells on the stack to go and get something else that you get to cast?
yeah,
that would be broken.
I mean,
You
that would
couldn't
be
do that.
broken. There's a reason you can't do that. I mean, you can steal their spell on the stack and then do it because it's just a spell you control. That's what you have to exile. So if you like stole their spell and then if you sudden substitutioned their spell and then exiled it.
Yeah, give them your Toxrill to turn their path to exile into an Ornithopter of Paradise.
I love it. Yes. But so I think this card is really fun. It's a joy to play. It always brings a smile to my face. And it's always one that is a new experience at the table if somebody hasn't played against this card before, which unless they played against you is probably the case. And they always get to be like, "Oh my gosh, this is a weird card. It does something so weird and funky and usually fun," I think.
To be honest with you, also fell in love with this one when I one time stole it from you. And
you did.
Yeah, with a Ragavan and was getting some sweet value
in a
out of it.
Faldorn deck. And it's really good in Faldorn.
It's really good in Faldorn, especially if you find your Squee the Immortal and can cast that from exile to roll the dice for a 4-mana spell. It's a sweet card, dude. This is a cool one.
It's
and
fun.
You're right, Phyrexian mana is just
objectively
very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sick. Okay, my next one is going to be pretty quick. This is just a cool card that I like playing and something I think is just a fun thing to be doing in Magic and one of my favorite things to be doing. This card, it's in my Shirei, Shizo's Caretaker deck. I'm not going to read Shirei. This doesn't have anything to do with Shirei necessarily. But it is Village Rites. So Village Rites is 1 black mana for an instant, and it says as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. And there's something in me that just loves when somebody tries to remove my thing, especially if they try to exile it and I don't want it to be in exile, to for 1 mana say, yeah, fine, it dies, but I draw 2 cards. Like, that's so sick.
You play this card masterfully.
Oh, yeah. You're so nice. I love it so much. If I have a Village Rites in hand, there's no chance I'm tapping out because I'm like, someone's going to remove my cards, and I want to be able to draw cards off them. And the art on this is just so sick and dark and scary.
And cool.
And
it is really cool. What is your favorite art for this card? If
I looked through the arts. The one that we're showing, Kelson is the one that edits our videos. I'm gonna send you exactly this one. Okay. I think it's really cool art. I think there's the original from M21 that's really cool, and it looks kind of like it really fits the theme of like.
It does. It feels like the
very Cabal.
Village.
Yes, it feels like the Village portion of Village Rites. I think the first one I ever got was the Strixhaven
cool.
Mystical Archives one, which I also think is really cool.
Really
but
cool.
I do think the one from Kaldheim is just really cool art. Yeah, it's sick.
Kaldheim had some pretty sweet art. It's pretty metal art.
It's metal, yeah. It's really cool. I just think, there's tons of cards out here. A functional reprint of this is like Corrupted Conviction. I just think Village Rites is the coolest art on this, and it's just a cool effect. To me, that is like the quintessence of playing an Aristocrats deck well is like, cool, I sack in response. Like, I think that's so cool.
That is cool. I love it. What a cool
Go ahead. I want to hear about your next one.
Okay. Actually, totally spilled the beans on this one. I mentioned it earlier in the episode. It's Breach the Multiverse. So 5 black for sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under your control. Then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types.
For each player?
Yeah, you get 4 things back.
Dude, I'm getting this card right now. That is so cool.
It's really cool. It's fun because it's a big, bomby spell. This is 7 mana, but you get 4 of the best creatures in graveyards with the additional 10 cards that each player mills onto the battlefield. And they become Phyrexians, which is really cool and flavorful. So I think it's a very flavorful effect. It's also very flavorful kind of with the lore, right? So like the art, I think, is depicting Realmbreaker, going through the omen paths, going into the blind eternities and infiltrating all the different planes. And so it's like pulling one creature from each plane, each person's graveyard into the battle, which I think is really cool. I also think the other reason I think this is really fun is because I've never had it countered. Because I think this would feel really bad to have countered. You sink 7 mana into this big spell and just get absolutely
take 2 treasures, an offer you can't refuse. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and so I've actually never had this countered. I've only resolved it a few times, with that much mana into. But I mean,
it's a blowout. It's good.
A blowout.
So in a Golgari deck, I'm like, why would I ever play Avenger of Zendikar when I can play Breach the Multiverse and get an Avenger of Zendikar anyways, and then 3 other creatures?
I love it. It's a cool card. It's wild.
Really cool.
It feels really cool to play. Feels really cool to resolve. Like I said, I haven't been totally blown out by getting this spell countered yet, but it's fun.
That's how bombs work, though, right? Like, they're really fun to resolve.
You gotta have them.
Really sucks when they get countered.
Yep. But
Still
then the games that they don't,
you win.
You kind of run away with it.
Yeah, that's a cool one. I need to find a deck to play this in because I think it's sick.
That's
sweet. Really cool.
It's really fun.
Okay, so my last one, this is from my Garth One-Eye deck, and this is a list I should post because I think it's functionally just done. I'm really happy with where it's at right now. But let me read Garth really quick. Garth One-Eye is my pet deck. Of any of my decks, I love all of my decks. This is my favorite child as far as my decks are concerned. Garth One-Eye costs Wooburg, so white, blue, black, red, green, for a 5/5 legendary creature human wizard. And Garth has tap, choose a card name that hasn't been chosen from among Disenchant, Brain Geyser, Terror, Sheevan Dragon Regrowth, and Black Lotus. Create a copy of the card with the chosen name. You may cast the copy. You still pay its costs.
But you can't cast Black Lotus, right? Because it's banned.
Right, exactly. You can't. Sorry, Black Lotus is banned. You can't cast it. Of course you can. You can get a Black Lotus for free. It's sick. So this deck, though, is built all around like tapping and untapping, because obviously tapping and untapping Garth, you can only do this once for each of them that hasn't been chosen, right? So you can do one of them. This deck tries to blink Garth, reset that to be able to get more Black Lotuses, because why would you cast anything on this list besides Black Lotus? No, it's all just really good effects, really fun deck. I love playing it because you can abuse the tapping and untapping, and that is where Tyvar Jubilant Brawler comes in. Tyvar Jubilant Brawler is 1 black-green for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, and he has the passive ability, you may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste, which is super huge for this deck because I want to activate Garth the turn he comes in, typically. And there's an infinite combo with Displacer Kitten where I need a haste enabler, or at least a pseudo haste enabler, to activate his ability to cast Black Lotus over and over again to generate infinite mana. Tyvar also has +1, untap up to 1 target creature. Again, great for a deck that wants to tap. And -2, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, which also is very good because you can get things like Esper Sentinel, Dockside Extortionist, a Pheto Alchemist, which I don't think is in the deck anymore, but a lot of really good value creatures you can just get out of your graveyard if you need to. But typically I'm just +1ing this to get like my Bloom Tender to tap for 10 total mana or whatever.
Ooh, so good.
Yeah, it's honestly a sweet value card that I think probably sees a fair amount of play, but instantly became one of my pet cards when it got printed. I saw it and I was like, this card's going to be $10. I bought a couple of copies. It's still like under $1. Totally. But I think it's just a really, really good card, especially in the right deck.
It's super cool.
And it makes me smile. Really, that's what we're talking about. I love...
And look at the smile on his face.
I know, he's so
happy
jubilant.
just punching a Phyrexian.
I know, just punching a Phyrexian with his steel skin.
That's awesome. I love it. Super cool card. And what a cool deck. I hope you post that to our Moxfield soon.
Dude, I love this deck so much. It's so sick. Several times, so Kenrith, the Returned King, is in the deck. And Kenrith is broken. Let me just tell everyone that hasn't played with Kenrith. Kenrith is absolutely busted that you just can activate his abilities. And every time I play Kenrith, I'm like, oh, I should just make this Kenrith deck. But then every time I play Garth, I'm like, oh, Garth is so sick. I can't, like, what am I doing? Of course this is a Garth deck. And I have a beautiful, I'll send a picture of it. One day when you have a Discord, I'll post a picture of this. Maybe we can just post it on the channel because you can do posts, right? Of the alternate that Kelton made me of Garth that is just... gorgeous. I love playing it every time.
That's nice of you. Thank you. We saw a similar altar that somebody did with this like gold foiling on Reddit, and so I tried my hand at a version as well, and it was really fun.
Sick. It's way cool.
Awesome. Well, my last card to wrap up this conversation is Scroll Rack. This is 2 mana for an artifact. It has the activated ability: pay 1 mana, tap it, exile any number of cards from your hand face down. Put that many cards from the top of your library into your hand. Then look at the exiled cards and put them on top of your library in any order. So I can exile any number of cards. So let's say I exile 3 cards from my hand. That means I get to put 3 cards from my deck into my hand, and then I get to take the 3 cards I exiled, rearrange them, put them on top of my deck. So I'm replacing the cards in my hand with cards from my deck, and then getting to reorder the ones that I put back on top.
I mean, they do go back on top, right?
Yep.
I was going to say this is like virtually a repeatable Valakut's Awakening. That's not true because they go back on top.
No.
But as we're speaking of people playing cards masterfully, you play this card exceptionally well. This is in your not Sliver Queen, first Sliver deck where you Cascade. And every time this is hit the battlefield, Kelson has said, hey, I just shuffled away. Like, he had some sort of shuffle effect, right, with a fetch land or whatever. Yeah. And he's like, hey, I just shuffled away 4 lands, by the way. Like, it's so awesome.
I do like to tell you what I shuffled away.
Yeah.
And that's part of why I think this card is so fun is I've taken the Wizards of the Coast surveys occasionally, and one of the questions that I've seen pop up in the surveys has to do with the flavor of Magic. It's like, how much do you enjoy the feeling of being a wizard? How much do you imagine yourself being a wizard and casting spells from your library of spells and things like that? And I almost never do. That's not really the reason I play Magic, is not necessarily that flavor of Magic. But this card makes me feel like a wizard. This card makes me feel like I'm like being sneaky and manipulating and like looking at these scrolls and shuffling through them and putting them back. And it's very easy to feel clever and like you're doing something crazy with this card. It is like a bit of a time sink in the same way that Sensei's Divining Top is, but this is really cool, and especially in the first sliver, because I play a lot of fetch lands, it's really nice to A, be able to shuffle away cards I don't want, but B, most of the time, I'm setting up cascades so that in that same turn I can cast something and then cascade into multiple spells, because that's how the first sliver works. So this card, there are a lot of cool or broken commanders that care about the top of your deck, and this is the card, this is the effect that breaks those commanders, that makes them really, really good.
And it's sick. Like, that, like you're saying, being a wizard, going through your mind palace, searching for spells or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I imagine, like, in the same way that for me, like, Aristocrats is like, you have to have an understanding of Magic and the stack and how things interact, which, like, albeit a base understanding, right? Like, it's not like it's that complex, but it does, like, lend you to have some gotcha moments where Scroll Rack, you can manipulate your deck in such a way that you're not having bad draws, or at least minimizing your bad draws, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just get to, or like shaping your hand in a way that you want to. It's really cool. I guess in the first sliver, you're like, okay, well, I'm about to cast a 4-mana sliver. Let me put this 3-mana sliver on top, and the 2/1 beneath it, and the 1-mana 1 beneath that, or whatever.
And then the 1-mana 1 always goes and gets me Profane Tutor.
Yeah, to win you the game.
My win, for the game. So
sick.
I think it's a really cool card. Can I take us on a slight tangent here?
Yeah, please.
This card was first printed in Tempest, and Tempest has some bangers.
Yeah,
there were
Tempest
some
is busted.
really, really good cards, like Ancient Tomb, Reanimate, Lotus Petal, Propaganda, like
Heuristic Study.
No, Heuristic Study wasn't originally. That was from Prophecy.
But was it also in Tempest though? No.
I don't know if there was a printing in Tempest.
Oh,
but this is where we got.
I misspoke.
This is where we got the Medallion Cycle.
So sick.
Time Warp, Wasteland. I mean, such a cool set. So that's also another reason I love this card. It's from Tempest, and Tempest is one of my pet sets in the sense that if I could go back in time, because I wasn't playing Magic at the time that Tempest was released, if I could go back in time and play a set, Tempest is like near the top of my list of sets that I want to play, because that was also the one with what's Doughty Voidwalker's ability called?
Shadow.
Shadow, yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
It was like one of the sets with Shadow, which was really
Okay, I have a question. Were there rares at that time? Was it all common?
cool. That's a good question. I don't.
They didn't have rarity attached to the cards, because I'm looking at this and as a
did.
black set symbol.
Yeah, I don't know if there was at that time.
If we have any
Because
old heads in the comments, please.
And that's why like Lotus Petal is played in Pauper.
Sure, because it's common.
It's
right.
common. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
So
they must not have, though, because Rhystic Study was also common in its set, right? I mean, maybe they just...
Yeah.
This was effectively... I don't think this wasn't the first trading card game, but it was close, right?
It was one of the first.
Yeah, and so maybe that hadn't been figured out yet, that portion of it, the chase cards portion.
So I don't know how it actually worked though, because there were like even like the alpha packs, when you see them do pack openings of like the alpha starter decks, there is like a rare slot.
Oh, interesting.
There's like a slot that has like either the Black Lotus or like one of the
Oh,
rare
so there's got to be
like
something on here that denotes the rarity of it.
Yeah,
then.
I don't
like
know how that worked.
Pokemon cards had like the dot, the star, or the, and nothing was like really that cool except for the foils and cool, interesting. Well, cool. I think that wraps up our cards that we think are fun.
We'd love to hear what cards you think are fun. We want to
Yeah.
hear the cards that bring you smiles. Spencer and I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we don't play enough of the cards that just make us smile. So we'd love to hear what your recommendations are so we can put them into our decks and that we can have the joy of playing these really fun cards as well.
Yeah, because we only think there are 5. Each of us only thinks there are 5.
There's only
please
5
help us-
fun cards in Magic.
Yeah, so help us find some more, please.
We love it. That's awesome. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate all of your support. Please remember to like and subscribe so you can get notified of our weekly Commander content. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. So until next week, tune in and remember to always pay the one.